So welcome everyone to our fantastic event this evening, How to Graduate with a Job. We are so fortunate to have amazing people with us this evening, Victoria Sturman from Resource, as well as Eric Salomon and Lynn Cantor, also from Resource, who are facilitating this event. But just want to say a massive thank you for coming to do this. We know that this is such a stressful time for our students, trying to figure out what to do next in their careers, whether you're in first year or in final year. This is such an important event for you to listen into and get those tips and tricks of what to do and how to graduate with a job. So I'm now going to pass over to Victoria to continue on with this event. So thank you again for doing this.
Thank you so much, Amanda, and a very warm welcome to our event, How to Graduate with a Job. A very quick word about who we are to reassure you that we really know what we're talking about, and then I'll hand over to the experts. So Resource is the Jewish community's go-to resource, helping people get into employment. With 30 years experience of helping people, our highly skilled professional team support over 1,000 people each year with their job search. We've been partnering with UJS for a few years now and have helped hundreds of students improve their job search skills, making each one of them more confident in their applications, interviews, presentations, assessment centres, etc., which in turn makes them more employable. And in these difficult times, that's important. So this presentation will take you on a journey from looking for job opportunities to being offered a role, and we'll provide tips and advice along the way. We're going to leave time for questions at the end, but if you'd prefer to speak to us privately, we'll let you know how to do this at the end too. I'd now like to introduce Resources facilitators, Lynn Cantor and Eric Salomon. As Resources Relationship Manager, Lynn specialises in connecting our clients with employers, and she helps people present themselves in the best possible light. And Eric is one of Resources facilitators who also conducts hundreds of practice interviews for our clients, in addition to lecturing on employability skills at New College of the Humanities. So I'm going to pass over to Lynn.
Today, we're going to take you through the journey of Jake, an undergraduate, who applied for the Nestlé graduate programme and then graduated with a job offer. We want you all to get a letter like this. Dear Jake, congratulations. We're delighted to let you know you have been successful. It'd be wonderful to have that in your inbox. So how can you do it, and how did Jake do it? Well, whatever Jake did, all the way through the process, he had to answer 3 questions. Can you do the job? Do you want the job? Will you fit in? And of course, there'll be hundreds of other jobs and information on CVs and application forms, but ultimately, these are the 3 questions you need to answer. Can you do the job? Do you want the job? And will you fit in? But first of all, Jack had to decide what it was he was going to apply for. He was doing politics with international relations and economics. That's not what he wanted to go into. So he had to start with a skills review. He had to find out what the skills he enjoyed using. He had to research careers and speak to people currently doing them. And also he used some sites to help him with his career choice. Now, these 2 sites you can see on the screen, if you go into them, they'll offer questionnaires, your strengths, your likes, your dislikes, your skills. And at the end, there's a choice of about 450 different jobs. So it will help you narrow down your area if you're doing one degree and not quite sure if you want to go into that same field, or it's a degree that actually is open to other types of careers. So it's a really good way to actually do that. It makes real good sense. And there are so many skills that you have. You might not even realize it, but so many of these skills are actually transferable. As graduates, you do a huge amount of planning and research. They are 2 transferable skills. With Jake studying his politics and international relations with economics, he wanted to move into marketing. But a lot of skills, teamwork, working to deadlines, all of that are skills that he will need in his new career. So don't worry about the skills that you're doing. You'll actually find so many are transferable. So once you've worked that out, and there's maybe one or two options you want to go down, how do you find the opportunities? Social media, obvious one. Online, in social networking groups, and maybe more formal situations. There's lots of situations where opportunities will arise. Now, your university will tell you about graduate fairs, and they're still happening even though they're online. But there's also websites like Glassdoor or Bright Network. Bright Network can offer advice, direct you to networking opportunities, and also offer some learning opportunities. So if you find there's a gap between the degree you're doing and the career you want to do, there may be a learning opportunity to close that gap. You can also look at companies directly. PwC, for example, offer taster days. Slaughter and May have innovation competitions, and some even give you a virtual path around their organisation. The two I want to spend a little bit more time on, though, are social media, which includes LinkedIn, and also actual personal contacts. Let's look at social media first. 75% of recruiters do find candidates through social media. 28% of employees are influenced on social media about their employers, and 93% of recruiters will actually check someone's profile. So what are the do's and don'ts? And they're definitely do's and don'ts. And they're highlighted here because they are really important. Don't badmouth people and don't rant. So you say you've gone for an interview and you didn't work out too well. Don't rant about it. Don't badmouth people. And if you go on things like Twitter, be very careful of that. Don't post any inappropriate photographs or content. One way to think about it, if you don't want your grandma to see it, don't post it. Always check your spelling. There, and there. We come across spelling mistakes all the time. It makes a difference. Keep it professional and do review privacy settings. And even with all that, mistakes can still happen. Jake had a friend called Emma. She was offered an interview. Great. But as a bit of fun amongst her friends, she, not very cleverly, put down she was a dildo tester. Unfortunately, they did check her social media profile. They rang her up the next day and said, sorry, we don't want someone like you in our company. What a wasted opportunity. So really do think the content that you have may be fun amongst your friends, but as you move into the next step in your career and your journey, make sure it's professional. And also just consider privacy settings, because there may be somebody in the company you want to work for you're actually connected to. So privacy settings may not be quite as private as you may think. Are you on LinkedIn? Because 87% of recruiters are. And these are the things that you need to have on LinkedIn. You need to create a profile. It's not your CV, but you do want to put something about yourself, your skills, your experiences. It's a great way of building contacts. Think of your alumni that graduated the year or 2 years before you. They would be brilliant contacts because they've been through the graduate and job hunting process, and you could connect with them on LinkedIn and help to build contacts. In the same way that recruiters look up you, you can look up your interviewers. In your summer jobs, your internships, your volunteering, get them to endorse you and offer recommendations. Follow the companies you're interested in. Join relevant groups and write content. Yes, you can write content. Think of maybe adding something about your dissertation or a project that you've done at university. Repost someone else's content with a sensible comment. All sorts of things that you can do to help get you noticed. Search for jobs and set up alerts. And one final thing is, remember there's LinkedIn Learning. Yes, you have to pay, but not for the first month. You get that free. So pick a month where you've got a bit more time on your hands and there's an opportunity there to actually maybe again close that gap between the degree you're doing and the career you want to do. There are learning opportunities that way around. But as well as networking on social media and LinkedIn, you need to think about having contacts and having conversations, because up to 70% of jobs come through the hidden job market. What's the hidden job market? It's where a job isn't advertised. Now, if you're looking for an internship, yes, they will be advertised, but it's possible there's a smaller company or not so well company that is also advertising internships that someone else may have heard of, but you haven't. So that's why having contacts and having conversations and building your network will help you find out about those things. Sometimes you do an internship, it may turn into a permanent role. A volunteer job may turn into a permanent role. So it really is important you do tap into that hidden job market. It's not always about a job. Sometimes it's tapping in to get information. Because you want a job, but you're not asking for a job. If you ask the job, it would be no. But people are more than happy to share what I call the 3 I's: information, introduction, and ideas. Information, it can be about an industry, a company, a job role, or even getting someone in industry to have a look at your CV or application form. People in industry know more people in industry, so it's a great opportunity for introductions. And ideas. They can give you ideas of maybe where to make new contacts, where to network, give you ideas of maybe a course that might be useful for you. So do remember, information, introduction, and ideas. But why would people want to help? Because generally and genuinely, people are more than happy to share information. They've been in the same position themselves in the past. They like you, or they like the person that's introduced you. And there could be a mutual benefit. And people, if you start speaking to people, you'll find they're more than happy to help. So what do these conversations say about you? If you're having conversations, you're already demonstrating your communication skills. By giving the example of some of the things that you've done, you're both willing to market yourself and showing your initiative. And said in an energetic voice and with a smile on your face, it shows you're enthusiastic and motivated. And all these things on this slide, these are the attributes that people want to employ. So go out there and be proactive, enthusiastic, and motivated, because conversations do say a lot about you. And it's a brilliant way to expand your network, because your network has their own network and they can create contacts on your behalf. So it's really important to do that. So at this point, we're going to stop the slides. And Eric and I are going to do a little bit of a demonstration. Jake has been speaking to his friend Solomon, who he's known for a very long time. What Jake didn't know was that Solomon's mother, Maureen, actually works for Nestle. And in a very chance conversation, he discovered she did. So he said, great, I'd love to have a conversation with your mother. So Eric is going to be Jake and I'm going to be Maureen. So this is how the conversation went.
Oh, hello, you're already there. Sorry, hang on, I can see you. Can you see me?
Not at the moment, no.
Let me figure this one out. I think, is it that one? Oh, there we go. Sorry, I'm late. I was just getting myself a beer. I didn't get one for you because Solomon said you're a G&T person.
Right, yes. What can I do for you?
Oh, well, Solomon said you could help me. You work at Nestle and I'd love to get a job there.
What sort of job would you like?
Oh, I don't really mind. I'm sure they must have lots of vacancies.
Well, nothing comes to mind right now. And to be honest, I suggest you look at the website. All our jobs are posted there and you'd have to apply through the website anyway. So that would be my recommendation.
Oh, I hadn't realized that. Oh, that's great. Thanks very much. Well, that was quick. You can go on with your day now. Bye, Maureen.
Bye. Jake did so many things in that example. He was late, There was no rapport. He went straight in, I want a job. No demonstration of his ability, and he lost control of the meeting. So let's replay it and show how Jake really did do it.
Are you going to disappear, Lynn?
I'm disappearing.
Disappear. Okay. Right. Just let me see. Get everything sorted out. Yep. Looks fine. I'm nice and early, and Lynn's not, or Maureen's not yet come on. So yeah, I'm ready. When Maureen arrives, I'm ready to go.
Hello.
Oh, hi, Maureen. Thank you so much
Hi.
for taking the time to see me this evening.
No problem at all. Solomon said, Solomon asked me to have a word with you. So what can I do for you?
Well, Solomon happened to mention that you worked at Nestle. Now, as you know, I've known Solomon for years, and I've been to your home many times, and we've chatted a lot, but I never knew that you worked for Nestle. But now I do understand why Jake always used to come to, Solomon used to come to work with so many Kit Kats every day.
Kit Kat, Smarties, Cheerios, we had the lot. We still do, to be honest. All well-known Nestle brands. Just as an aside, what Jake was doing there, he was building rapport. He was finding connection with Maureen's mum, been to your house several times. Because even though he had and had conversations with her, she might not have remembered him in particular. So he was reminding her, as well as talking about the Nestle products. He was warming up the conversation. This is what happened next.
Maureen, I was wondering if you could give me some more information and details of Nestle and their graduate recruitment program.
So why Nestle, and what in particular?
Well, my degree is actually in politics and international relations with economics, but I'm really interested in marketing. In fact, that's how I met Solomon. When we were both at JFS, I was relaunching the weekly email newsletter promoting the extracurricular clubs and activities that were open to students, and it was very successful, and it grew participation by about 50%. And during last summer, I enrolled in the M&C Saatchi open house program, where I learned an awful lot about marketing and how companies like Nestle build their brands. So I'm now applying for a variety of graduate marketing roles. And one of them obviously is Nestle, which really does look exciting. So I just wondered, what advice, help, suggestions you could give me.
So just as an aside, this is the point where Jake was marketing himself. He was giving an example of what he did, his degree and his interest in marketing. And at this point, Maureen would provide useful information. So let's say she's done that. This is what happened next.
Oh, Maureen, thank you. That was very helpful background. It'll really make a big difference now. Is there anybody else who would be useful for me to speak to or contact with? Now, it'd be great to talk to a graduate who's actually been through the program. Can you point me at one?
Actually, yes, there's Joey in my team. He's not in marketing, but he was on the graduate scheme last year, and all the graduates know all the other graduates, and he must know somebody in marketing. Let me have a word with Joey.
Oh, that would be brilliant. Thank you so much. If you could introduce us via email, I'm quite happy to follow up directly. My email address is eric@resourcecentre.org, and my phone number is 999.
Just as an aside here, at this point, Jake was seeking to expand his network. He got hold of Maureen and he saw an opportunity to find out who else she knew. And in this case, a graduate who'd been through the scheme. And he most probably knows somebody actually in marketing. So he's going to hopefully get more and more referrals. Let's see what happened in the final part.
Oh, wow. Just looking at the time, Maureen. Sorry, I'm very conscious. Am I keeping you from anything?
No, not at all. I'm happy to help one of Solomon's friends. I have a few more minutes, actually. Do you want me to have a look at your CV?
Oh, that would be fantastic. I did send you a copy. Have you got it handy?
I have indeed. And at this point, Jake and Maureen will review Jake's CV.
Well, thank you for your advice, Maureen. Some great tips there. I'm sure it's going to make a big difference. Really, this whole meeting really has been very, very helpful. Thank you so much. In fact, I'm seeing Solomon later on this evening. I'll tell him I've spoken to you and what we talked about, and I'll follow up with you next week after I've contacted Joey.
No problem. I'll speak to Joey tomorrow, and I'll make the connection by email. And when you speak to Solomon next, will you tell him to give his mum a ring sometime?
Yes, of course I will do, Maureen. All the best. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. So what Jake did particularly well then, he stayed in control. He said he would follow up. He's going to maintain that contact. And of course, after the meeting, he will drop her a quick thank you. So just to recap on that whole section, there are 3 questions you ultimately need to answer. Can you do the job? Do you want the job? Will you fit? You need to think about your skills review and the careers you want to go into. You need to identify the opportunities and then use social media and your network of contacts to actually get as much information and advice as you possibly can. At this point, I'm now going to hand over to Eric, and he'll take you through the application process that Jake went through.
Thank you, Lynn. Good evening, everybody. So, story so far. Jake has looked at his skills, he's looked at what he enjoys doing, he's talked to his contacts, he's even talked to Solomon's mum who works at Nestle, and he's come to the conclusion that marketing is what he wants to do, and the marketing scheme offered by Nestle in particular is one that he finds very attractive. So he's now beginning the application process. And this process is very typical to most application processes for graduate recruitment and indeed for internships these days. There might be an extra element of the program, they might be in a different order, but fundamentally, it's all about the same thing. So let's take the Nestle example, a pre-screening. Now, pre-screening is essentially an eligibility test. Do you have a right to work in the UK? Do you have the appropriate qualifications? After all, if you're applying for an engineer graduate recruitment scheme, have you got the right engineering qualifications? What about location? Are you prepared to work in the Orkneys if necessary? Lots of people won't, and therefore will be excluded from applying. So once the eligibility screening has gone through, you will then be invited to do an online application. Obviously, all your personal data will be required, all your details of your degree, your education, work experience, internships, etc. But in addition to that, and in particular the Nestle one, will include a number of quite specific questions. Why the graduate marketing program? Why Nestle? And then some quite specific questions. Nestle is a very much a strength-based organization in terms of its recruitment. So they might ask you to write a couple of 100 words on, what achievement are you most proud of, and things of that nature, as well as some specific skill questions. They might ask you for a CV as well and a covering letter. So very often, not only an application, but a CV and covering letter. Then there'll be some online tests, skill tests, numeracy tests, verbal reasoning tests, maybe a psychometric personality test to see if you'll fit into the organization. And then finally, in Nestle's case, the assessment center. Now, the number of people I talk to about assessment centers, and they just completely fall apart. So we'll come on and talk a little bit more about them. So I'll say they're the essential ingredients of the vast majority of application processes for graduates and for undergraduates. Now, I touched on the CV. Whether or not the application calls for it or not, you need to have a good, solid CV, because lots of job applications will require a CV. And as I've said there, the CV gets Jake the interview. That's what the purpose of a CV is. It's not to tell your life story. You're not trying to win a Pulitzer Prize for literature. You are simply trying to get an interview with the employer you are sending that CV to. So the other thing you can do with your CV is you can set the agenda for the interview. The information you put on the CV is what you will be questions about in the interview. So if you want to talk about your experience when you did a 3-month volunteer job in the Sahara, let them know on your CV that that is something you have done. You will then be questions about it. And the final point about a CV, you can use it to market yourself. Lim was explaining the importance of having conversations, of meeting people and contacts. And as we showed in that little demo, Jake had actually sent a copy of his CV to the person he was talking to. It makes a big difference. Couple of things to remember though about a CV. Now these days, the chances are that certainly for these big recruitment programs, it will not be a human being that first looks at your CV. It'll be some kind of artificial intelligence. Someone was telling me earlier, NHS received over 18,000 applications for their graduate program. Obviously, no human being is going to read all that. It's read by machine. And it's known as ATS in these organizations, applicant tracking systems. And once the AI has done its job, and believe you me, it is pretty thorough. It will check layout. It will look for keywords. It will look for action verbs. It will look for responsibilities. It will know if you just padded it out with filler words and cliches, and it will reject it. And of course, most importantly, spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, inconsistencies in format can all be picked up by AI, and it will automatically throw your application out. In fact, last year I went to a talk by someone who represents, I think, the largest recruiter of graduates in the UK every year. And they have a very simple rule: 3 strikes and you're out. You have more than 3 grammatical inconsistencies, typos, etc. That's it. End of application. Once it's been through AI, the employer is going to read it. And they will have different criteria, because the first criteria an employer will say, can I be bothered reading it? Take a look at this. What should you be putting on your CV? First of all, a profile. Okay, a profile is a summary all about you and what makes you tick. But it needs to be in the context of the job you're applying for. There is no point, Jake, in his profile to his application for Nestle graduate marketing program to rabbit on about his knowledge and interest in politics and international relations. What he needs to talk about, and what he did talk about, as you will see, is the skills he has developed that they are looking for: analytical skills, research skills, communication skills. Make the CV relevant to the job you're applying for. Similarly, after a profile, achievements. The best way for an employer to know what you can do in the future is by evidence of what you have done in the past. So specify your achievements, but relative, again, don't go on about your knowledge of international politics. That's not what the job is about. As I said, analysis, research, communication, obviously your education and qualifications. But as I've just said, within that, don't just simply say, a degree in X. What does that involve? What skills have you learned and developed as a result of the course that you're studying? Obviously, experience from the workplace, competencies, skills and achievements, from internships, from holiday. And it doesn't matter if it was working as a barista at a Costa Coffee. You have still gained knowledge and experience, as Jake has done. And then, as it were, the icing on the cake. If you speak languages, tell people. Now, Nestle is an international company. A candidate who can speak languages in addition to English is a bonus and will add value to that individual applying. Talk about the positions of responsibility you've held in and outside of university, volunteer work that you've done, charity work, etc., and also your hobbies and interests. So let's take a look at a CV. And I'm sure I don't need to tell you, it's a mess. All different typefaces. The formatting has all gone to pot. The typeface is almost illegible. That will definitely get rejected by a machine. And if the machine didn't kick it out, believe you me, no human being would take that CV off their pile and read it. When you've got that many CVs, if you put a few in the bin, it's no big deal. Okay, what should it look like? Now that's better. It's very clear, it's very simple, it's easy to read and follow, and there's plenty of white space. I don't feel overwhelmed. And look, what's Jake telling me in his profile? Politics and international relations, and with an active interest in marketing. Oh, that's interesting. Research, written and communication skills gained at university, through internships, and great. And he speaks French. That's a real bonus for Nestle. So can you see how Jake tailored his CV to the job that he was applying for? Then his achievements, qualifications, and again, it's backed up with what he did, and employment. And to be honest, the more you can put on your CV of things you have done, employment, internships, even if they're not particularly highly impressive jobs, it all adds to your value for a prospective employers. Okay, application, you've been through that. Let's move on now and talk about assessment centres, because they're, I say, fundamental to just about every recruitment process that a grad, undergrad will go through. And again, it seems to invoke absolute terror in most people. But just bear in mind, they're actually, in fact, very simple. Lynn started off by saying, Jake got the job because he gave the right answer to 3 questions. Can you do the job? Do you want to do the job? Will you fit in? And the assessment centre is the same. It's not a competition. You know, it's not a mini Olympics where you have to outperform everybody else. It's an employer's attempt to ensure that you have answered those 3 questions completely and honestly. And it does it by practical methods. Now, it is very easy to say, it's very easy to write, I'm a very collaborative person. But in an assessment centre, they can actually practically see if you are a collaborative team player, as opposed to just screaming and shouting and trying to come out top of the file. Let's look a little bit more detail of assessment centres. Now, assessment centres cover a whole range of different exercises, and you can see them there. Group exercises, where everyone, or 8 or 10 people, could be asked to do a group task, have a group discussion. I mean, I recently heard of an HR one where each of the candidates was given a job description and a CV, and they all had to promote their individual applicant to the rest of the team to get them interviewed. Things like that. Situational judgment analysis. They will give you a scenario. This happens, what would you do about it? An E-tray exercise. You'll present it with 25 emails, sort them, prioritize them, draw up your to-do list in order to assess how you do prioritize, how you do organize your workload. A case study. You get a load of facts and figures, launch a new product. For 8 to 10-year-old kids, here's the background, here's the information, put together a plan to launch a new product to appeal to them. Now, the so-called informal events. We're now going to have a 15-minute break, guys. Why don't you just talk amongst yourselves, have a coffee. We'll be there if you want to ask any questions. Believe you me, there's nothing informal about it. You are being assessed right the way through that process. So make sure you approach the right people, you behave in the right manner, and you ask the right questions. Presentations. You might be given a brief before the assessment centre. You might not be given the brief till the assessment centre. You have 15 minutes. There's the brief. Prepare a presentation. Interviews. Interviews can take place at any part of the process. It could be the initial, it could be the final. Inevitably, there will almost certainly be an interview during the assessment centre. And indeed, in some assessment centre, if there's 10 assessors, they will arrange it in such a way that either as 2s or 3s, every single assessor will get the chance to interview every single employee. And again, prospective employee. Again, there's lots of tips we can give you about interviews. Skill tests, numeracy, verbal reasoning, all that kind of stuff, and role plays. Organizations will employ actors to act out particular scenarios and put you in that scenario and see how you are going to respond to what actually goes on. So that's just some insight into the variety of exercises that can happen. Now, if you go online and Google, you will get 100, if not more, organizations telling you, oh, we know the Nestle process. We can tell you what happens at their assessment centers. And then say, if you send us a check for £80 or an online payment for £80, we'll send you it. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but just be very sensible. One I would recommend is one called Test Partnership, who actually provide a lot of free tests. So they do free numeracy tests, verbal reasoning. They will do a variety of personality tests, situational judgment, and they're all free. So the website is testpartnership.com, And when you get in there, search their free tests, if nothing else, you'll just see they're not as bad as people might pretend they are and make you believe they are. And by practicing a few, you will feel more comfortable. So that's a quick run through what might happen at an assessment center. Focusing in on just 2 or 3, because they're very relevant to Jake, because Jake was applying to Nestle, and there's a couple of things that Nestle are very strong at in their assessment centers. First of all, are group exercises. What will basically happen is everyone will get a brief. They might dole out specific responsibilities, but let's assume everyone's been given a brief for what the purpose of the meeting is. When you're preparing and reading and thinking what you might do, think about how you will interact in that exercise. For example, think about, well, I'm running this meeting. We've got to have an agenda. What should the agenda be? What are the steps we need to go through to get to the end results? What are the skills we need? Well, we need someone with IT skills. We need someone with creative skills. We need someone with analytical skills. So spell that out. So when you get into the team and you start discussing, well, hang on, who's got these particular skills that we need? Timekeeping. You will have a fixed time, as Jake did, to do the exercise. If you go in saying, hey guys, we've got an hour, why don't we spend 10 minutes discussing it? Why don't we spend 15 minutes allocating out the responsibilities, 15 minutes while each of those people prepares their input, and then final 20 minutes discussing and agreeing what we're going to do going forward and planning how we're going to present the data. Proactively ensure everyone is involved. The key reason for group exercises is to see who is collaborative. How do you get others involved? How do you generate more information, more ideas by involving people? So if you see someone isn't contributing, ask them, John, what did you think of what Jane just said? Or I'm sure you've got some great ideas, share them with us. They're the kind of ways you need to behave in a group exercise. It is not a competition. You don't win a group exercise. You score points for doing the right thing. And if you get the right number of points, tick against your group exercise performance and onto the next performance and judgment. That's it. Not a question of winning. It's a question of collaborating. The other area I'd like to just briefly touch on is the presentation. Again, people get very nervous about presentations. My advice, whether it's before the interview or before the assessment center, you're given the brief, or during it, read the brief from beginning to end. There's a temptation after every line to start writing, oh, I must do that. Oh, that sounds interesting. Read the whole brief to get an overview, because it could often be that it's not till you get to the last sentence you really understand what you are being asked to deliver. And they will often do that deliberately. So you waste time before that. What is the brief really about? And once you've done that, then you can reread it. Then you can write your notes and ideas and thoughts. Answer the question. And in fact, not only the answer question, but I suggest that when you're presenting, the first slide, first flip chart, whiteboard, whatever it is the question. Not only does it remind you what the question is and keep you focused, believe you me, it reminds the people who are there listening to your response. Because I bet you that half of them have clean forgotten what the question was, and they could well be assessing you along the wrong dimensions. So put the question up, then answer it. No scripts. When you're preparing your presentation, prepare bullet points and talk to those bullet points. It'll come across more natural and it'll have more impact. And finally, and most importantly, if it says 5 minutes, they will stop you at 5 minutes, no matter how well you have done or how poorly you have done. So please stick to timing on presentation. And just a quick word on interviews. Jake got it absolutely right. He was accepted for the Nestle application to go to the assessment center, but he didn't give up. He kept on looking for jobs. He kept on applying for jobs. Believe me, there's nothing better than going to an interview or an assessment center knowing you've got 2 more already stacked up behind you. It's a great incentive and it gives you a lot of confidence. Prepare, prepare, prepare. Preparing is not about writing scripts. It's about research, understanding the role, understanding the organization, talking to people like Solomon's mother who works in the organization, finding out about the competition, finding about sectors, understanding what skills they're looking for and how you can describe how you meet those skills. First impressions really matter. You know, before a word has been spoken, whether it's online or physical face-to-face, people will come to a conclusion about you. Rightly or wrongly, they will. Make it that first impression. Don't be like the bad boy that I showed before, you know, couldn't work the video, faffing around setting it up, you know, swigging beer, looking untidy, etc. Use what we call STAR, and I'll come on and talk about that: situation, task, action, results. Probably most of you have heard it. It is a great way to respond to interview questions. Answer the question and then shut up. You know, if you've answered the question and you're satisfied you've answered it properly, don't keep talking just because the interviewer hasn't asked you another question, because all you'll do is dig a great big hole for yourself. If there is a pause, would you like me to give you another example? Should I explain it further? So once you've answered the question, shut up. And finally, inevitably, you will be asked, what questions do you have for us? And even if they don't, you need to be proactive and ask questions. But those questions need to be strategic and topical. They need to be about the organization, about the role, about the direction the organization is going. It's not when can I get promoted? Is there any opportunity for international travel? It's all about you demonstrating your interest and enthusiasm for the organization and what it does. And the final thing I'd just like to say about interviews, 90% of the time, there is one question which will always kick off the interview. It's that tell me about yourself question, or, you know, what sort of person are you, Jake? So what Lynn and I would like to try and do is give you an example of a tell me about yourself question. So Lynn is going to be the interviewer. I'm going to be the interviewee. Over to you, Lynn.
Hello, Jake. Well done on getting through the assessment centre. This is the last stage of the process. So I'm Lynn Cantor, the relationship manager, and with me is my marketing colleague, Alice Jones. Jake, please tell us about yourself.
Yeah, of course, no prob. Well, I'm really into music. I play guitar and keyboard, and I've travelled all over the world, music festivals, etc. And I've no problem, you know, sleeping in muddy fields. And back here, me and my mates, you know, we do gigs at uni. Like my other passion really is football. I'm absolutely mad about football. I play for 3 different teams. And in fact, in one of the leagues I play for, I was top scorer last season with 17 goals. So my girlfriend absolutely loves After 8 Mints. And it would really be cool to work for the company who makes them.
Thank you. As an aside, as an interviewer, well, Jake has thrown it all away. He answered about his hobbies and interests. Instead, he should have focused on presenting his skills and experiences relevant to the job role. And he should have presented more professionally, removing words such as so and like. Let's replay that again as to how Jake actually did do it. Hello, Jake. Well done on completing the assessment centre. This is the last stage of the process. I'm Lynn Cantor, the relationship manager, and with me is my marketing colleague, Alice Jones. So please tell us about yourself.
Yes, and of course, thank you. I'm a final year student at university, and I'm studying politics and international relations with economics. And my studies have given me a real appreciation of different cultures. I've developed a global perspective of human behavior, and I've got a real understanding of the fundamentals of business. It's also helped me develop my research and analytical skills. And in fact, in a recent dissertation I had to prepare, I had to do extensive research across a number of different countries, studying the political scenarios, and a lot of analysis to try and identify longer term trends across those countries. I've always had an interest in marketing. When I was in secondary school, I relaunched a weekly email update to promote the clubs and activities which were available to all the pupils. I redesigned the newsletter from scratch so I could improve engagement, and the responses improved quite dramatically. In fact, participation in the extracurricular activities grew by 50% in the first year. I'm a member of the University Judaica Society, which promotes appreciation of Jewish culture and traditions. And I assisted in our social media activity to promote a broad range of events, and we were regularly getting over 100 people as an audience. I had a summer vacation job as barista in Costa Coffee, which was great fun. And as well as making coffee, I had to help out my colleagues when things were busy. I had to attend to customers' requests to make sure orders were delivered to specification and on time. And of course, it's nothing worse than serving a cup of cold coffee. Last September, I participated in the M&C Saatchi Open House program of webinars. I learned how companies like Nestle build relationships with the consumer to create strong brands. And I've grown up with your products, and and knowing how I feel about them made me realize just how powerful this could be. That's what sparked my desire to be part of the process and why I applied to this particular program.
Thank you, Jake. So in Jake's first response, he's already starting to answer the 3 questions. Can he do the job? He talked about information that was required in the job description, analysis, research, teamwork. He demonstrated his interest in marketing, even though his degree is in something else. And he also has a grounding in different cultures. He's doing okay so far. Does he want the job? Well, he certainly sounded enthusiastic. And he mentioned the M&C Saatchi marketing program. And he also demonstrated competencies, and he talked about the Nestle products. Will he fit? Well, he demonstrated understanding of the consumer, has good communication skills, and he's worked in a team. It certainly made a good start. So now we're going to continue delving further into his abilities. And my next question is going to be, tell me about a time when you were asked to take on a new responsibility. And this is probably how not to do it. So Jake, tell me about a time when you were asked to take on a new responsibility.
Yeah, well, none of us had done anything like it before, but no one else would do it. So I got a few mates together and we relaunched the school weekly email newsletter. We had to do absolutely everything that was involved, and everyone who got it said it was absolutely great and what fun it was, and we had great fun, I must admit, doing it.
Jake had a great opportunity there to really explain how he relaunched a program, but actually there was no context. There was no description whatsoever what he did or who did what in the team. He kept referring to we and not I, what he did. And though everyone thought it was great, there was no quantification of this. So how could Jake have done it better? Well, I'm going to hand back over to Eric, who will take us through the STAR, S-T-A-R, and then we'll come back to how Jake really did answer this question.
Okay, Lynn, thank you. STAR. It's just a concise, punchy way to respond. There's nothing magical about it, and it doesn't matter whether it's a competency-based question or a strength-based question or a values question. S, situation, provide some context and background. Simple task, describe the particular problem, challenge that faced you. Very simple. And make it simple because you need the interviewer to very quickly grasp what the kind of issues were. Action. Now, this is the important bit. This needs to be 70, 80% of what you talk about. What did you do? What did you actually do? What did Jake do in order to relaunch that newsletter? In specific detail, what were the options he considered? That's what the interviewer wants to hear about. And then obviously the results, some facts and figures to back it up, as Jake did, 50% increase in participation, 90% of activities saying that they had greater participation. So again, what Lynn and I are going to now do is take you through how Jake, using STAR, would have responded to the question.
So I'm asking Jake, tell me about a time when you were asked to take on a new responsibility. In his mind, he's thinking situation. So he will start by succinctly providing context and background to the situation.
Well, when I was at JFS, there used to be a weekly email update sent to students advising them of all the various activities that were available for them that week. But because no one was prepared to take it up and run with it, nothing had been published for 6 months.
Jake would then briefly explain the task he did and the challenge that he took on.
So I was a head teacher, went round and told all these students about the situation and asked for volunteers to take on the challenge. Now, I knew it would be a real challenge, but I did see it as a great opportunity, particularly given my interest in marketing. So I volunteered to relaunch the weekly newsletter.
The action part of the response is where Jake wants to spend 70 to 80% of his time. He wants to describe in some detail what he did and how. He wants to base his responses on the skills and competencies the employer is looking for, such as research, planning, collaboration. He also wants to make sure he refers to what he did, i.e. using I, not we.
The first thing I did was put together a small team to support me. I persuaded a couple of other students that it would be a great challenge, very rewarding and lots of fun. I asked Solomon, who was very artistic, and Daniel, who had excellent IT skills and also experience of website, which would be helpful. I then spoke to lots of students in different ways, in different years rather, asking their views. You know, what content would they like? What kind of style should it be? What would encourage them to read the newsletter and take action? I spoke to friends at other schools to help me generate ideas. What were they doing in other schools? And based on all these findings, I wrote a couple of briefs. One brief for the visual style and one brief for the technology requirements. I discussed these with Daniel and Solomon. We agreed changes and we also agreed a timeline for implementation. I met with representatives of all the various clubs and activities in the school, got their buy-in to what I was proposing and got their agreement on the content and information which should be included. I then produced a dummy version, reviewed it with various contributors and readers, and took on board their feedback, and we launched.
And to wrap up his example, Jake is going to close it by talking about the impact of his efforts, using facts and figures to emphasize the success of the project.
Well, the relaunch timetable was achieved, and engagement by students exceeded 80%, compared to about 55% with the previous iteration of the newsletter. But importantly, 93% of the activities and clubs which were featured all reported increases in participation.
So by using situation, task, action and result as an approach, it's easy for the others to understand and follow what Jake was talking about, what he achieved. And he proved he has the skills by providing specific evidence and examples. Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Lynn. So there are just a couple of questions on interviews, but here's some which people have said to us, we dread being asked these questions. And what we'd like you to do is, what questions do you dread? Do them on the Facebook chat, and we're going to do our best to try and answer them for you here and now, absolutely live and absolutely cold without any preparation. So send your questions in on the Facebook chat, please, guys. And I'll tell you what, while we're just waiting for some to come in, I mean, let's just pick one of them. What is your weakness? Everybody has weaknesses, so there's no point saying, I don't have a weakness. No one will believe you. The important thing is that what you describe as a weakness is not one of the key elements of the job description. So if the job description says high proficiency in Excel, I wouldn't recommend saying, oh, my weakness is I hate doing Excel. So choose something which isn't going to, be a real showstopper. So for example, if we come back to the graduate program, maybe you could talk about your weakness being, I get very, very nervous at the prospect of having to talk to large numbers of people. Not key to the job. It's not a big deal. It's not make or break in terms of the job, but it's a real problem. The next thing you need to do with the weakness is demonstrate how you have managed that weakness. And in fact, although it's a weakness, it in no ways impairs your ability. So what do I do when I know I might have to speak to a very large audience? I prepare. I prepare what I could say if I'm called upon to participate. And because I prepare it early, well ahead of the event, I'm can relax. I'm not panicking all the way up to the event that I'm going to be asked and I won't be able to do it. And the second thing I find, several deep breaths before I start responding always seems to work and settle my nerves. So now I don't volunteer to talk in front of big crowds, but if I have to, I have absolutely no problem. Okay, I hope that made sense. Victoria, do we have any questions in?
I'm afraid we ran out of time, Eric, for the questions, so we'll have to do those on an individual basis, I'm afraid. Sorry.
No problem. So let's just wrap it up. We saw the letter at the beginning. Jake got the job. Why? Because he demonstrated in every aspect of the application process, he demonstrated he can do the job, he wants to do the job, and he will fit in. And that's how you guys, you graduate with a job. Thank you. Back to Victoria.
Well, thank you so much, Eric and Lynn, my super colleagues at Resource, for taking us through Jake's journey to employment. I really hope you found that helpful. And I know it might seem very daunting. There's a lot to take in, and it is a difficult time with so many people applying for these jobs, but I can assure you there is a job there for each and every one of you. It may not be on a grad scheme. It may be for one of the many, many companies that are hiring that right now. But there is a job for each of you. I would like to invite you to come to Resource. In fact, I'll put our contact details here, and please call us up and we'll be very happy to meet you on a one-to-one basis. Our phone number is here. Our website is resource-centre.org. A lot of information on our website about how we work, but our services are all free. We've got a lot of experience with helping students, and you're very welcome to come to us. Wishing you all the very, very best for your futures, and hopefully we can meet you in person at our next event with UJS. Thanks, everybody.